Hi, welcome back to episode 3 of my podcast, They're Not Mine. This is a podcast series about life with kids through the eyes of an auntie, moi. Just a quick note, don't forget, check out my They're Not Mine YouTube channel because we've got some fantastic animation that's supporting this podcast series, and I really think you're going to enjoy it. Shall we do a quick lightning fast recap on where we're at with the story so far? I have 3 siblings, Trina, Bindi, Guy. Trina's just had a baby girl, first grandchild. Her name's Annie. She comes for sleepovers as much as I can have her. And I bought a cot that is proving really hard to disassemble. And I have my Nonie, who I love very much. Actually, let's talk about Nonie. Nonie walked the talk. She laughed hard. She knew when she was needed. And she partied like the best of us. She was brave and taught me how to be brave. And she showed me how to love unconditionally. And these were 2 beautiful qualities that also came through with both my mum and my Auntie Tricia. But this is my story about Nonie. She didn't just tell me about the importance of family. She showed me. Nonie passed away at 99 years and 9 months. Our family would joke she had done a Bradman. Now, for those of you who don't know, Sir Donald Bradman was a famous, if not the most famous Australian cricketer who had a batting average of 99.9 runs, a whisker away from the holy grail of 100. About 15 years before she died, I moved in and lived with her. And I have to say she was the best flatmate I ever had. Now, this isn't about comparing her to really shonky flatmates, although there was this one guy I remember that I lived with, and he would only eat tomato soup out of the saucepan, and I don't think I ever saw him wash his bedsheets. Anyway, without doubt, Nonie was the best flatmate I ever had. I was separating from my husband and I went to Nonie. It's not easy having a conversation to tell your grandmother that you and your husband are separating. Not easy to tell anyone you love. But she met me with love and kindness and absolute understanding. And I asked if I could move in with her for a while, at least until we got things sorted. And without hesitation, she said yes. I was 30 and she was 82. We were a great odd couple. And I would be remiss if I did not mention my beloved Pop. Her husband of 58 years, his name was Stan. You know, there'd be times I'd come home late at night and I would hear her in a bedroom saying her prayers. You see, my Pop had died a year earlier and I could hear her not only saying prayers but talking to him, and I'd hear her gently crying. It was really hard and it would break my heart to hear her grieve. She loved him. They loved each other. Together, Nonie and Pop gave us life-giving memories. I mean, from silly things like Nonie would set the breakfast table the night before. She made the best roast dinners and a fantastic chocolate cake. I remember the letters and postcards they would send. Well, it was usually Nonie, even if they were only away for a short time. But the best memories was when we were all kids and we would stay over at Nonie and Pop's. And of a morning, all 4 of us would climb into bed with Nonie and Pop. Now, you have to imagine, this is not a king or a queen-size bed. This is a double bed with 2 grown adults and 4 kids ranging from maybe 12, 18 months of age to 9 and a half years of age. And the directive was very simple. Everyone had to lay on their side. Sure, if one of us rolled over, we'd all have to roll over, but Nonie and Pop would read us books, tell us stories, and if we needed to change positions, we'd roll over. But there was typically one objector who, when we rolled, would lay flat on her back. Trina, you know who I'm talking about. As a kid, it was a perfect way to start the day. Well, actually, it wasn't the actual start of the day. What started the morning would be Pop circulating the house, making a noise of a steam train. Now, I know as my siblings are listening to this, they're sitting there going, oh, please tell me, dear God, she's not about to make the noise. I'm going to make the noise. He would make the noise that would go like, woo, woo. It was a steam train noise. And as kids, we loved it when we were little. But as teenagers, when you're 15 years of age and you just want to sleep in, it was just damn annoying. For breakfast, Pop made the best pikelets, and no sooner was a hot batch off the stove, it was on the table and they were being devoured. Now, for those of you who don't know what a pikelet is, pikelet's probably half the size of a pancake, a little bit fluffier inside. The beauty about being half the size, you could eat twice as much. Anyway, Pop did a lot of things that were just fantastic with us for kids. He built us a billy cart and we would ride up and down his driveway. He grew the most amazing garden full of vegetables and would allow us just walk through and pick them, usually with some level of overriding instructions. And I have really strong memories of Pop tinkering away in his tool shed or the garage. And he'd let us anytime come in, play, sit and watch. And if you hung in there for too long, you were bound to be given a job, and it usually meant holding something straight. No, you're not holding it straight enough. I said, hold it straighter. But if I close my eyes now, I can still smell the grease in the garage. But if I close my eyes now, I can still smell the grease in the garage and the oily rags on his tool bench. Life with Nonie and Pop was so full, from playing bat and ball in the backyard to sitting under the massive mulberry tree at the bottom of their garden. And as kids, we would just pull fresh mulberries off the branches and strip it bare, to trying to catch the goldfish in the pond when Nonie wasn't watching. Nonie and Pop were loving. They were fantastic grandparents, but they were firm. I remember you couldn't lie to Nonie. She'd look at you and she'd say, "Are you telling me a fib?" And if we used a smart tone in a response or a retort to her, she'd say immediately, "Don't be bold." I mean, man, you don't even hear the words fib or bold being used these days. Nonie and Pop always made time at the end of the day to sit down and share a cold beer. Now, I've got to tell you that probably the last 10 years it was Pop's home brew. It wasn't great, but that was love. She'd drink it. Whenever we had a special family gathering at Nonie and Pop's, we would move from having the meal around the kitchen table to into the dining room, the good room. Now, this table at best would take 4 to 6 people, and at times there was up to 10 of us. There'd be Nonie and Pop, Mum and Dad, the 4 of us kids, Auntie Tricia, Uncle Reg, and there was no room. And yeah, with 4 kids, trust me, there were plenty of rounds of, "Mum, I can feel her touching me. Tell him to get his leg off me." I don't know what it was. Maybe it was Nonie's cooking that was the ultimate peacemaker. Nonie and Pop showed us how to have fun. They were fabulous party people, whether it was a family gathering or a really big celebration like a wedding. They were in it, boots and all, and always the last to leave. We were all turning the lights out. Now, I know I've taken a break from the main story about being an auntie, but I really want you to know Nonie and Pop and just how much they showed the importance of family. Like, I remember my sister Trina's 21st birthday. The theme was "Come as your fantasy." Nonie went dressed as a biker's mole. Her words, not mine. She had the black fishnets, the black leather shorts, the black leather waistcoat, the fake tattoos and the black boots. Absolutely fabulous, and she was the hit of the party. Pop came dressed as a schoolboy, a naughty schoolboy, in full uniform, licking an oversized lollipop. They were in their mid-70s, and man, they knew how to party and have fun. They showed us. At the start of this episode, I shared with you that Nonie showed me how to be brave. Now, I'm not talking about being one of 14 kids in the early 1900s and surviving, the struggles in those times, or being a mother raising a family during World War II. I'm talking about lights, camera, action brave. You see, she was out with Auntie Trish and discovered this product called Sard's Wonder Soap. And she loved it. It was a cake of soap that was designed for cleaning clothes. And she wanted to buy more and couldn't get it in the area she lived, Parramatta. So she wrote to the manufacturers and asked them where could she buy it. They wrote back and asked her if she would be interested in doing a TV commercial campaign. And in her words, she was tickle pink. Absolutely, she said. The company arranged for a car to collect her and bring her to the studio to talk about her experience using the soap. No script was provided. And in typical Nonie fashion, no guts without glory. got in front of the camera and she spoke from the heart and from her reality of washing Pop's clothes.
I have one of the dirtiest husbands in not only Parramatta, I think New South Wales. When Stan comes home with his fishing shirt on with blood and guts and grease off the rod, Wonder Soap's the only product, the only soap that'll get rid of all those stains.
Sard Wonder Soap. It's so unique, it's the only patented stain remover.
Wonder Soap's a marvellous product.
Nonie always reminded me to be comfortable and confident in my own skin. And I'll never forget, she demonstrated this at the 1995 National Rugby League Grand Final. So, bit of a backstory. I got an invitation to a corporate lunch from one of the suppliers with the retail group I worked with. And my invitation was Tanya +1. I didn't have a +1. In fact, I was going through my divorce at that point. And I knew if there was anyone I could take to the rugby league, it had to be Nonie. She was a die-hard rugby league fan. She would listen to it on the wireless of a weekend. That's how far back it goes for her listening to the rugby league. Now, her team was the Parramatta Eels. They weren't in the final, but I just knew I somehow had to try and get her to the grand final. I'd been invited by Nick Gray of the Gray Nichols cricket fame. So I rang Nick and I said, look, I'm going to ask a favour here. I know she's not the typical profile of a guest for a corporate lunch, but trust me, she will be a hit. Can I bring my grandmother? And without hesitation, Nick said yes. Nonie was almost 30 years older than any of the other guests at the corporate lunch, and she was a hit. She knew the players, she knew the teams because she'd been following the whole comp. She was booing the refs, she was working the room, she was cajoling with the other guests. It was fantastic. She was in her element. I will always be grateful to Nick Gray for allowing me to bring my grandmother as my +1. It was a fantastic day. We talked about it for years. And I had front row seats on how to be comfortable and confident in your own skin. Nonie was great at it. Now, it's really important that I touch on the family catalogue of Nonieisms. These were sayings that we grew up with. 1, never put new shoes on a table. It'll bring you bad luck. Don't ask me why. 2, if the two of you are walking down the street and you both walk either side of the pole, one has to say a word that's opposite to the other, like pepper, salt, black, white. Again, it'll bring you bad luck if you don't, and please don't ask me why. Another one, if you hear an ambulance siren, you have to hang on to a button on your clothing. And if you haven't got a button on your clothing, you have to hang on to your belly button until you see a dog. If you don't, you could end up being in the back of the next ambulance. Don't ask me why, but we all just religiously followed. And of course, a favourite was you always had to wear good underwear, because what if you got into a car accident and the doctors saw you with holes in your underpants? Now, I've got to admit, as kids, we never questioned it, but as we got older, we thought, wouldn't that be the least of our worries if we were in a bad car accident? But we were all raised, you always wore good underwear. These Nonieisms will be passed down to the next generation. And when they ask questions, our response, don't ask us why. Earlier I mentioned Nonie would say her prayers every night. And you know, in the midst of that, we would have a running joke. She'd always ask me, have you met a nice fella? Have you met a nice bloke yet? I mean, the word fella you don't even hear these days. And of course I'd say, no, Nonie, not yet. And she said, well, I'm praying for you. I'll keep saying my prayers. I'll keep saying my prayers. And we'd laugh. We would laugh as she would tell me, I'll keep saying them. I'm trying. He would eventually come along in an elevator halfway across the world. And I know Nonie helped make that happen. I knew I had to be brave, and she'd show me how to do that too. But that story is yet to come. When Nonie passed away, I walked into her room and she was laying in her bed. The staff had prepared her for us to say goodbye, and there was a bunch of lavender on her chest. We all knew she was dying, and we had spent the last few weeks leading up to today being with her, talking to her, holding her hand as she started to drift away. It was really interesting. The older and smaller in stature Nonie became, the greater her influence. Here I was standing by her bed, and I looked at my mum and I asked her if she would leave the room. And I knew what I needed to do. And just like I'd done as a kid, I climbed onto her bed and laid on my side and held on to her as long as I could. It was the last time I was going to hold my Nonie. Whew. I knew I wouldn't get through that bit. Sorry, folks. Nonie and Pop taught me a lot about the values, love, traditions, and above everything, the importance of family. And I knew I would take these in being Auntie Tan to these kids. Yep, I said kids. There's a wedding coming and maybe another baby. But that's for the next story. I look forward to seeing you for episode 4 of They're Not Mine. Don't forget to subscribe to They're Not Mine wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, check out the YouTube channel for the full episodes with animation. I'm Auntie Tan. See you soon.